archetypal image of authoritarian systems, people on reservations, plantations, Roman slave grids, to have checkpoints and the roads turning into militarized systems. That is what it is to live in an occupied country. When you have that, we've shown you military training films where they admit secretly, this is martial law. This is what it's like to live in a third world country.
That's true. And the biggest way they're getting away with the things like the roadblocks and the things like you're talking about is right now everyone is under the impression this applies to me. And because they're acquiescing to that, they're making themselves subject to it. Pretty much everything in the transportation code is done by agreement. I agree to be bound by these rules as long as I'm acting in this privileged state.
And as it's done millions of times, it creates a common law precedent. It's still fraudulent, but from what I've researched in law, possessions 9/10, they are by just way of just what's the term that they use in some of the more ancient common law, that it's a custom. Mm-hmm. And so they're accustomed. They're getting the cops accustomed. They're getting you accustomed.
Right. They basically have acclimated us to be apathetic in the exercise of our rights. Your rights are what the state dictates your rights are. That's what our kids are being trained in school to accept. That's what the adults are being trained to accept. For those that are actually in law enforcement, believe it or not, there are many of them that don't understand the nuances of what's going on, but they know they don't like it.
Well, let's talk about that, but take vaccines. They've known there's no law, you have to take vaccines. They lie on the news in concert, across the country, the same talking point, say it's the law, you'll be arrested. But really, the school triggers truancy, kicks you out, and then uses the truancy to try to arrest you. When they were lying and kicking you out for something that wasn't a law, they're now engaged in racketeering and fraud.
That's true. That's true. They're actually misrepresenting the law, and believe it or not, Texas has a law against that. If you misrepresent the existence of a law for the purpose of creating or inducing an action by another, that's illegal in this state. It's completely illegal. And no one knows that, and no one will take that penal statute and go after the public servant that's using it illegally in that manner. For instance, one of the biggest things the police use here in Texas to illegally arrest people is either public intoxication statute or failure to identify. Now, 38.02 penal code here in Texas on the failure to identify is very, very specific. In order to be charged with failure to identify, the individual must have already been lawfully arrested for some other crime. And emphasis on lawfully arrested. Here, they try to take you to jail. If you won't produce a driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance during a traffic stop, they say that you failed to identify. But the statute does not require a physical presentation of a physical identity card of any kind. It simply requires you provide 3 pieces of information: name, address, and date of birth, and nothing more. Now, given that, when you are being told you have to provide a physical ID...
By the way, that's international common law. Name, rank, and serial number.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Military status of everything. But again, if I have not been lawfully arrested for something, I'm not even and cannot be required to provide you even with that information. So if you're attempting to take a transportation statute and use it against me as a private citizen, I have not been lawfully arrested. And in Texas...
Go back to some of the federal rulings. I mean, I could pull them up on transportation, but I know you'll probably know them from memory. It goes back to saying, well, the trucks are tearing up our roads. We'll charge them a special tax because the general public paid for these roads because they're engaged in commerce, and that's all they're talking about.
Yeah, Chicago Motor Coach versus state of Illinois. You've got... let's see, we have one out of San Antonio here in Texas that is very clear. I can't remember the site for it, but it says very clearly that all of the roads in the state belong to the people, and we have every right to use them with the common conveyances of the day, including an automobile.
Well, that's why they're trying to tell farmers now they can't drive down the side of the road with federal regulations, because they want to abridge that common right of people using the shoulders. Well, that's the Chisholm Trail. I-35 out there was made by people driving cattle. Humans have a right, especially in agriculture, to move down the road.
That's true. But again, this federal incursion into the states is our fault. It's our fault because we're not resisting it. We're not resisting it by going after our representatives that are allowing and giving permission for the federal government to do these things. The people that say they're there to represent us are not representing us. It's just that simple. Can we fix this politically? Doubtful. Why? Because all the politics is bought and paid for already.
But some of it we are reversing. Take Perry with the NAFTA highways. That got exposed and stopped, most of it. His Gardasil, he said it's the law, you will take it, and the legislature called him. I mean, some of this stuff, they're getting so bold that it's going to bring them down.
That's true. But again, as the general public, we have to be knowledgeable about what these people are doing. We need to be as knowledgeable about the laws of our state as they are. So when they violate them, we know exactly where to go after them.
Okay, we're driving down the road. Again, I'm going to have you back in the near future on the show tonight. We can talk for 10 hours. But there's so much to talk about. But let's say I'm driving down the road, or you're driving down the road, and you're going 6 miles over the speed limit, and I turn my lights on, you pull over on the right-hand side, and I come over and I say, license and registration, please. Not that they ever really say please anymore. And then where do you go from there? And then 2 minutes later, I say, mind if I search your vehicle? Okay.
In my class that I teach down at Brave New Books, I have 3 set questions we ask and 3 set actions that follow. First question is what is the emergency and how can I help? We're not going to presume under any circumstances we've done anything wrong because we're not in transportation. So the laws they're using to pull us over for speeding or anything else don't apply. Second question is am I under arrest? Third question is, am I free to go? You cannot get the same answer to question 2 and 3. If you do, something's wrong. We ask those questions to specifically make the record known that we are in a custodial arrest and we know it. This automatically invokes our right to remain silent, not to testify against ourselves, so on and so forth. The courts have adjudicated that aspect very clearly. Very few people realize that Texas law specifically creates the instance of a custodial arrest the moment an officer pulls you over for the express purpose of issuing a citation. Chapter 543 Transportation Code dictates very clearly that the arresting officer can only release the person arrested from custody if the person will sign the promise to appear on the citation. Otherwise, the officer is required by law to take the person immediately before a magistrate. They never do these things. They'll threaten you.
And this is the law.
This is the law. It is right.
I mean, they're so busy always throwing the book at us for nothing. They're just violating it up one side and down the other.
Correct. And that's very rarely why in these wins in court you were talking about that I ever have to go to merits of the case. Why? I will never address the merits of a case that have outstanding due process violations. And at a minimum, the moment a police officer pulls you over on the side of the road, he will commit a minimum of 5 due process violations before that stop ends.
But that's just like them now putting GPS on tens of thousands of people's cars with no warrant. And the courts are saying, yeah, we can do that now. Or the iPhones, the government dialing and enlisting without warrants. They just do it. Or now trying to put tags on all the license plates. I mean, this is 1984. And just 10 years ago, everybody's like, oh, that'll never happen. Now that it's happening, you said a lot of police you talk to, and same with me, a lot of them are good people, and they know stuff's wrong. They don't have all the nuances. They know more than the public, but they haven't really studied it. And I mean, I challenge them to study just basic history. This is bona fide illegal garbage. Every time the government spies on you without a warrant, it's a felony, state and federal. I can pull it up for people. I mean, this is a big deal. You're going to commit all these felonies. Cops ask they want to search my car, and I'm like, number one, you're not an idiot. Do I look like I use your illegal products? They start getting mad, and I say, what? The government's been caught over and over again dealing drugs. You make me sick. I mean, what do you say to them when they want to search your car?
Well, if they're going to search my car, they're going to have to break into it. On a traffic stop, the very first thing I do is pull into a private parking lot, not the side of the road. I go onto some piece of private property. I immediately get out of my car, lock the doors, and throw the keys into the front seat. I keep a spare door key in my wallet, which he doesn't have to know. But the only reason they can search your car on a traffic stop is if you are in it. And the courts have ruled over and over again they can do that as a general search of the passenger and driver compartment area to ensure that you don't have access to a weapon that could harm the officer. By getting out of the car, locking the door, and putting the keys inside, you remove any possibility whatsoever of having an access to a weapon inside that car if there even is one. Therefore, you remove any viable explanation the officer could have for conducting a search without a warrant. That's my practice and policy, and it's what I've done every time I've been pulled over. And so far, they will not get a warrant. They cannot hold you to call a drug dog in unless they show up during the period of time when they're actually working on issuing the citation. Then they can take the time to run the dog around the car. Having worked in law enforcement, I know when they key the dog to make him react.
I've talked to cops who admit that Flash will always do it for a biscuit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, the things they do in order to find some reason to terrorize the public, a lot of these officers, is astounding. It really, really is.
I only acquiesced once when I was on the radio in about 45 minutes. I was only halfway there, and they pulled me over on 183 back when I was 15 years ago up there. And they wanted to search my Tahoe. And I said, no, I don't authorize it. He said, well, I'm going to get a dog. And I looked at my watch and I said, okay, go ahead. But I'm doing this under duress because I got to get to work. And I said, I don't use your products. And he kind of, as soon as I let him, he just left. And I understand, as soon as I said he could, he didn't want to search it then. And I know cops are actually fighting real criminals all day. So they get this idea of, well, we'll just violate things because we're doing good. But that's how they build these tyrannies. That's how, it's this excuse of we're going to get at the job. I saw somebody comment on my website about warrantless checkpoints, and they said, it was obviously a cop, we're fighting crime and nothing will stop us from getting to the bad guys. And it's nothing like those mindless Dudley Do-Rights whose supervisor's probably dealing cocaine and they don't even know it. I mean, these guys are just, in your experience, from what I've seen, some of the best well-meaning people, goody two-shoe types, are some of the dumbest and most dangerous because they just absolutely believe they're in the right.
That's very true. It's very true. It's all about education, and it's all about the education they didn't get. A lot of these people are chosen because they've been immunized against violations of people's rights. They've been immunized against violence and so on and so forth. So they have a particular mindset about them that allows them to excel in these particular positions. There are many of these people that are there for the ego trip, the power that it gives them, so on and so forth. And then there are those that are genuinely there for the purpose of serving and protecting the public. The day I met you down at the Capitol, I was actually in the process of talking to numerous DPS officers down there about the traffic statutes themselves. And one of the things in the traffic seminar that we sell on Rule of Law Radio is that the book is written entirely about how to read, understand, and research statutory law. We use the Texas traffic statutes expressly for that purpose. And I was explaining to them about what the mission of the DPS is. In Texas, the DPS's mission is strictly to supervise traffic on rural highways and to supervise and regulate, emphasis on regulate, meaning license, registration, insurance, and all this, commercial and for-hire traffic. Now, that's not you and me.
And that, by the way, that's the law. I've read it.
Yeah.
Because you tell police officers are like, no. I'm like, would you please read your own penal code? We'll be right back. We'll do an extra segment of Overdrive. We'll take some calls as well. Finish the story when we get back.
Introducing a diabetes breakthrough, an easy, natural, organic way to bring relief to diabetics. Introducing MDS Forte, a concentrated super-strength extract formulated for those who are looking for relief. What can MDS Forte do for you? MDS Forte reduces glucose levels safely and effectively, reduces cholesterol and triglyceride levels, increases HDL or good cholesterol while reducing LDL or bad cholesterol. MDS Forte reduces A1C, improves eyesight and circulation to the limbs, and helps with weight loss. Is non-toxic, caffeine-free, 100% natural, 100% organic, and comes with a 100% money-back guarantee. Waiting for the side effects disclaimers? With MDS Forte, there are none. Order a 25-day treatment of MDS Forte by calling 213-405-5355, 213-405-5355, or visit bestbloodsupport.com. That's bestbloodsupport.com for MDS Forte, a diabetes breakthrough.
There are limitless ways to go into business for yourself, but most involve substantial capital and risk. Our InfoWarsTeam.com operation is different. We